Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
Welcome once again to the Dr. Sky Experience, heard exclusively here on Talk Radio 77 WABC, beaming out of New York, around the nation, around the world, and I'm sure out into the cosmos. We like to call this radio station, in our opinion, the crown jewel of radio, and rightfully so. The iconic 77 Talk Radio WABC. As we continue to move through rapidly month number 10, October 2023, here is your Dr. Sky Update, talking about many of the things that you can see wherever you're listening to this incredible radio station. We begin, of course, with the moon, and we'll have a very special topic to talk about later in the month of October as we celebrate for the Western United States and a good portion of the nation an annular eclipse of the sun taking place on Saturday morning, October the 14th. But as we open up October, we find out that the moon is at its last quarter, coming out of the last of the full supermoons of 2023, that back on September the 29th with the beautiful full harvest moon, a supermoon indeed, a most romantic moon, and one that we'll be talking about in some detail. Last quarter moon on October the 6th as the moon wanes, but then the moon moves on to apogee, setting us up for that incredible alignment, that rare celestial geometry, sacred geometry, as we move toward the 14th of October with an annular eclipse of the sun. We find out that new moon naturally happens on the 14th, when the moon, smaller than normal, near or past apogee, will be smaller as it moves across the disk of the sun for lucky sky watchers in a path about 106 miles wide, stretching across a good portion of the western United States and into the Pacific Northwest. Then on the evening of the 15th, you could start to see the moon waxing once again as it normally does. We find out that the moon reaches first quarter on October the 22nd, a great time, in Dr. Sky's opinion, to view some of the most amazing differences between shadow, light, and dark, and the most amazing views of craters, seas, and much more on Earth's nearest neighbor. We also find out that the moon moves on to perigee, its closest position to the Earth, in October on the 26th, as we then move on to the 28th with the next of the series of full moons, this one officially known as the full Hunter's Moon on the 28th of October. But what about some other special events that are happening in the sky? Let's begin with planets, the Greek word planeteos for wandering stars, as they captivate everybody's attention within, I'm sure, the sound of my voice. And once again, you're listening to the Dr. Sky Experience, heard exclusively here on Talk Radio 77 WABC, as we like to say, beaming out of New York City, around the nation, around the world, and I'm sure even out into the cosmos. But for planets, we begin in the evening sky. High up into the southeast at sunset is the majestic planet Saturn. I like to call it the original ring world, simply because you can actually see in a small telescope this most surreal view. If you've never seen the rings of Saturn, go out and either buy a telescope or know somebody who has one, because the ring system almost looks surreal, or it's almost as if it was created by a special effects generator like in the movies, but it's real. Upon inspection of the rings under low power, the rings are tilted toward the Earth by a little over 8 degrees. And in the next few years, the ring system will tighten up, and we'll see the rings edge on, so many people will doubt that Saturn has rings, because you'll almost see them disappear for a number of years. But they'll be back, I assure you. In the morning sky, the sky show continues. The planet Venus, literally, is at its greatest elongation in the west part of the sun. Simply what that means is, if you look into the early morning sky just before sunrise, Venus will appear some 47 degrees away from the rising sun, and that is about as far as it can get, and also a time when Venus reaches what we call dichotomy. So when you view it in the telescope, it'll appear as if it were a half moon, or like a first or last quarter moon. But then the planet Mercury, still hugging the horizon just before sunrise, as it moves then into the glare of the sun, sometime around the mid-portion of October. But don't forget, another amazing planet, ladies and gentlemen, is now starting to rise in the late evening. And that's none other than the giant planet, the god of gods, the planet Jupiter, sometimes referred to as Zeus, the god of gods. Don't miss it. It rises in the constellation of Aries, literally as we move toward the end of October, just about the time of sunset, as it reaches its opposition, or closest to the Earth, on the date of November the 1st. But anyway, who's splitting hairs? The planet will be simply visible in the eastern part of the sky as early as, say, 9 p.m. And in telescopes and even in binoculars, you'll get to see those amazing 4 satellites that Galileo discovered back on January 7th of the year 1610. This is a most amazing sight. Jupiter at its best, simply as we wrap up planets, as we talk about this series of events. The planet Jupiter is magnificent. Remember, 88,000 miles across. It would take some 12 Earths to fill in that thing that you're looking at, the planet. That has really an amazing image and an amazing size. We also talk about some other amazing events. As we mentioned, an annular eclipse of the sun taking place on the morning hours of October the 14th, primarily in the western portion of the United States, but visible widely across the nation as a partial solar eclipse. Now, here's Dr. Sky's recommendation. Do not stare directly at the sun under any circumstances, as permanent eye damage can occur, as you all know. But what we recommend is going to our sister company at TSE17.com. That's TSE17.com, standing for Total Solar Eclipse of 2017.com. There you can find the proper solar glasses and how to order. And if you'd like to do that, send an email to TSE17eclipse@gmail.com. That's TSE17eclipse@gmail.com. And mention you heard it here on the Dr. Sky Experience here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. And then we have another interesting event to talk about, among others. We have the annual Orionid meteor shower, which takes place and peaks in the eastern part of the sky from about 3 a.m. to sunrise, right around the mornings of October the 21st and 22nd. If you happen to get to see any of these so-called shooting stars, just know that you're fortunate. This is all debris from one of the most famous of all comets, Comet Halley. Thus, we can see these objects traveling through the atmosphere, the size of maybe beach sand, the size of beach sand or small gravel, as they incinerate, traveling over 100,000 miles an hour, and maybe even some slower. That's another big event for the month of October. But also something if you're traveling into the western part of the United States, Dr. Sky and Company, Dr. Sky Incorporated, will have its staff at the annual Albuquerque International Balloon Festival and Fiesta. We will be there throughout the entirety of this eclipse. That means we'll be doing a special program on site on Eclipse Day on October the 14th. But if you and your family would like to join us, we'll be conducting a very special program primarily for children and people of all ages at the International Balloon Museum, right on site where the Balloon Fiesta is taking place on Thursday, October the 12th, from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And to learn so much more about that event, go to balloonmuseum.com. This is an amazing event where hundreds and thousands of people gather as we talk about lighter-than-air vehicles, the original aeronauts, as many describe balloons as what? Clouds encased in paper that glide across the sky. And if you've ever seen any of these balloon ascensions, can you imagine seeing in the early morning, just around sunrise, a mass ascension of these lighter-than-air, beautiful event objects in the sky called balloons? We also would like to remind you, if you have any questions or comments, email me at drskyshow@gmail.com. We remind you always what? To always remember to keep your feet on the ground, and always remember to keep your eyes to the skies. Also, as simply, I'm your navigator on the highway to the heavens. And if you're here in Phoenix, Arizona, by all means, stop and say hello to the many people that help support the Dr. Sky Experience, at least in spirit. And one of those is New York Best of the West Pizza, Raphael's Pizza. They're located in Phoenix and in Glendale, Arizona. They've been doing this and serving up New York-style Best of the West Pizza for about 47 years. And also closer to home here in Gilbert, Arizona is Yao's Chinese Restaurant, a good supporter of the things we do here locally in the western United States in advancing and opening people's minds about the wonders of the nighttime sky, particularly the subject of astronomy, space, aviation and weather. So to wrap it up, don't miss the annular solar eclipse that'll take place on October the 14th, mostly seen in the western United States, but a partial eclipse for many others, and our activities at the beautiful Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta that takes place primarily during Eclipse Day and all during the week before as we move on through time and space. We'll see all of you there in Albuquerque and at the International Balloon Museum Thursday evening, October the 12th, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And thank you to all those that listen to us with John Catsimatidis every Sunday on the Cats Roundtable, and then bi-weekly or bi-monthly on a radio show that we get an hour every 2 weeks. And we're privileged and honored to be with Frank Morano on his Other Side of Midnight as we move on to what we now call it, the Infinite Side of Midnight, as we continue to explore these realms of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather. Clear skies, and we'll talk to you next week with an update on more details on the annular solar eclipse of October the 14th, 2023.